Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Incredible Walking, the 30-day course. I'm so excited you're here. I know that some of you are visiting for only one session, for today's session as a trial. I hope this session will be good enough that you will decide to join the rest of the course. But for everybody who is in the session for 30 days, my hope is that you will be so blown away by the end of the 30 days that you will want to study more. And then we can talk about maybe doing a year-long course of once a week sessions where we can continue because the material is super rich. If you look at the development, baby development of gait, it takes 7 years to achieve a mature gait. So this is something that our brain needs quite a little time to process. Of course, all of us have already mastered it in the first time around. And now is the opportunity to fill some gaps where we missed. The normal structure of the course will be that we will meet on Mondays for the full 90-minute session. During those sessions, I'll teach you some theory. And then we will do practice because the learning is really experiential. You need to do it and feel it in yourself. What I don't want you to do is to try to learn how to walk correctly. I do not want you to learn how to walk properly. There is no such thing as correct or proper walking. And even if it were, using your thinking, using your prefrontal cortex for changing your gait is a futile idea. The prefrontal cortex is too slow. It's not going to cut. Not even your somatosensory motor cortex can do. We need to make learning at the deeper levels of our nervous system, lower levels, through what's called CPGs, central pattern generators. And that's the training that we'll do by moving, by making movements. This will be happening even when you don't know that you're learning. So don't try to learn how to walk properly and then willfully do so. Rather, experiment in the next 30 days. Make tons of mistakes. Mistakes are wonderful, but don't make the same mistake, because if we make the same mistake over and over, that's what we learn. But if you make mistakes here and there, one way, another way, this is a fantastic, rich environment for learning. So the classes, the lessons will provide you with that. All right. As always, your comfort is super important. Don't push yourself. Don't do something because Marek said that you should be doing. Listen to your body. Feel what it works. What works, allow. What doesn't work, what produces strain, modify, abandon even. Stay and do nothing while there is a section of certain movement that produces discomfort. None of the movements and positions that we'll use should be uncomfortable. All right, and let's start with theory. So we'll talk about, every session will have the theoretical component, and then we'll do the work itself. All right, so let's take a look together at some concepts. The tools that I use for teachings very often is Complete Anatomy app. I love this app. I use it very often. Practically, there is no week that I go without that app, where I show people anatomical structures, my clients, my patients. And this course will also have a lot of material from Dr. Donald Newman's book called Kinesiology of Musculoskeletal System. Fantastic book, although this is for clinicians, for doctors, for physical therapists. And I find that a lot of the clients who actually get so interested and curious in this work actually get that book. But this is very, very technical. It's a huge, huge book. All right, let's talk about gait phases, because throughout the 30 days, we are going to get very, very skillful in recognizing different phases. The most fundamental division of gait is two phases: stance and swing. Stance is usually about 60% of time. So here on the model from Dr. Newman's book, we have the complete gait cycle that starts with a heel strike and ends with a heel strike. So you go through the full cycle. So for the right leg, stance begins at the heel strike or heel contact. Then there is heel flat, initial acceptance of weight, mid stance, when you're carrying your whole weight over your right leg. Then you begin to lift your heel. Then you start to lift your toe, a push-off. Then your right leg starts the swing phase when it's off the floor and travels forward before it lands again. So in the most general way, there is a stance and there is a swing phase. This could be subdivided into moments when we are supported on both feet, which is actually that's why it takes kids a year to learn how to walk, just to start walking, and then 7 years to mature it, because most of the time in walking, 80% of time, we spend with one foot touching the floor only. The double limb support is here, where you have the right heel striking and the left heel off to left toe off, push off. And then you are with the single leg. Then there is another double limb support when the opposite happens. The left heel strikes, the right heel lifts and toes off. So 80% of time is with you balancing yourself on one leg. This is spectacular. The essentials of walking, that when I think of walking, what's really important? So number one is safety. Safety. In other words, the job is not to fall. The job is to preserve yourself, not to injure yourself while walking, to maintain equilibrium or homeostasis. So the number one thing will be, please do not fall. And I don't mean like you during the course, of course. But when I work with clients, in my back of my head, I think, before I introduce some improvement to walking, I need to know that brain is trying not to fall. That's number one. Number two is the outcome. Yeah, we want to arrive. The point of walking is locomotion, to get from one point to another point, short distance, long distance, hike in the mountains. Number three is conservation of energy. Your system always wants to spend minimum amount of energy on doing anything. And this is the beauty there. If you've never seen Dr. Feldenkrais lecture on what he does, he was invited by scientists at CERN. They asked him to find out why did he abandon physics and what is it that he does. He has a fantastic model of what Feldenkrais method is, and where he talks about the nervous system, skeleton, muscles, and interaction with environment. And what he says that my method does connection of all of these elements. And when you look at the job of those elements, they are to preserve energy. Your nervous system, your brain is the most interested in preserving energy, conserving energy. Your skeleton, the same thing. It's created to cancel gravity, so you can support yourself without any muscular work. Conservation of energy. Your muscles, you don't want to have white knuckles and clench your jaw and hold your breath while you are watching a movie or going for a walk, right? This will be spending unnecessary energy. Your way of interacting with the floor, the same deal, with minimum expenditure of energy. So energy, what is it? What how we measure it, because sometimes we talk about energy in a very loose way, some kind of flow of something. Let's make it very concrete. Energy can be measured. And the big part is, the first part is kind of difficult too. How do you measure that? How many calories I burn per meter, meaning 3 feet or a yard, or about a yard of distance per kilogram of my body, right? So this is a very abstract thing. The way that scientists measure it indirectly is through consumption of oxygen. So you see, for example, athletes, high-performing athletes on bikes connected to machines, breathing through masks. The scientists are trying to test how much energy they're spending on biking, on doing the whatever they do, sports they do. For walking, we're also will be interested throughout the next 30 days. This will be one of the central pivotal themes, how to walk with minimum amount of energy. So how you conserve the energy? By optimization of up and down movement of your body. You don't want your gait to be too bouncy. You want to have a certain flow of the center of mass up and down. You don't want to make it totally flat line level, but we will optimize. You will learn what it really means. Controlling momentum of your body's movement, and then taking advantage of transfer of energy. The best conservation of energy happens around our regular street walking speed, which is for on average 3 miles per hour. This is where scientists, when they connect oxygen consumption, they found that if you walk slower than 3 miles per hour, you conserve more energy. And if you go faster than about 3 miles per hour, you also spend more energy. And we know that because we know how difficult, when walking in a museum, when walking too slowly, you spend more energy. And when you go too fast, you have an increased consumption of energy. About 3 miles per hour is perfect. And of course, abnormal gait increases how much energy we consume. And we know that often when you're injured, you cannot walk 3 miles per hour. So first thing that happens is you lower the speed in order to utilize the same amount of energy and manage your limp or circumduction or waddling or whatever we do to deal with injury, with disease. And if we organize ourselves in thinking how to improve my own energy expenditure in walking, what's going to happen is your gait pattern, how you walk, will improve too. This model here is kind of very old because it was proposed originally by Saunders and colleagues in 53. And it was his work called 6 Determinants of Gait, which was challenged, and it's modified and updated slightly. Some of his ideas do not hold, others needed to be modified, but still the majority of the concepts work. How you achieve conservation of energy? 1, with improved pelvic rotation. 2, with ankle movements of flexing and pointing, improving that motion. 3, by allowing the knee to flex during mid-stance. 4, seesaw movements or obliquity of pelvis. And then the 5th one is side-to-side movements. Don't worry, I know this is like, oh my God, I don't understand what he's saying. Don't worry, we'll make it so clear. And today we're actually to work with the first 2. You will have a clear concept. How it conserves energy is by reducing the up and down motion of your center of mass. How it's achieved? Let's take a look. Because there are 2 types of energy. There is a potential energy and kinetic energy. When you walk, even though you feel that you walk at the same speed, that let's say this natural sidewalk walking, 3 miles per hour, initially or internally, you feel that you're walking at constant speed, but actually our speed changes during the walk. There is always a deceleration and acceleration. You speed up and slows down. Your body does it normally, which resembles kind of like going up and downhill on the bike. You speed up, the fastest you move during your gait cycle is when you kind of falling, like in here, this section, kinetic energy increases when the person is swinging the leg from mid stance, the left leg here, to falling forward. This is when the speed increases. Then, as you climbing onto the foot, as you coming to mid stance, you're actually traveling the slowest. So you constantly speed up, slow down with every step you take. And the kinetic energy is in the reversal proportion to potential energy. Potential energy is dependent on center of mass of the body. The higher the center of mass, the tallest the enduring gait is when you are standing here, when you're in the mid stance. When you're standing on in this situation, right foot, or on that situation here, left foot, you are the tallest. Your potential energy is the highest. At the same time, your speed and kinetic energy, because kinetic energy is proportional to velocity, to your speed. So when you're the tallest, your speed is the lowest, but potential energy is the highest. When you're swinging the leg forward, you are kind of falling downhill. The kinetic energy goes up, but you get a little bit lower, you get shorter. So vertical displacement of up and down of center of mass. Our center of mass is actually at the middle of our pelvis, somewhere. Place your right hand, please, or dominant hand on your belly button and slide your hand a little bit down, somewhere between your pubic bone and your belly button. That's where your center of mass is. Try to sense it. It's at the level of second sacral vertebra. It's right where your hand is, somewhere deep behind your head, in front of your sacrum, is where the center of mass is. But this, again, is hard to measure. How do you check center of mass movement if it's buried deep inside our pelvis? The easiest is actually by observing what happens with the top of the head. When I work with clients, practically there is no session that I won't start with watching somebody walk. Of course, for people who can walk, for people who are able to walk. And one of the things that I watch is how much of vertical movement up and down I see. Does the person get taller over the right foot or over the left foot? Is the symmetry between one foot or the other? Or do I feel that the person is falling on one leg, getting taller on one and then falling on the other? There's so many variations. I also try to watch how much of the displacement of up and down happens. Excessive is no good. Reduce, like trying to flatten the line, is also, from the point of view of conservation of energy, not ideal. Then there is also side-to-side displacement of center of mass. We walk, this bottom line here, the red line, follows the trip. This is the trip of your center of mass on the path of walking. So it's always, in order to be in balance, you want to be somewhere where your base of support is, in the middle of your base of support. If you border outside of the base of support, you feel wobbly, and then your muscles suddenly jerk in the quick contractions in order to catch yourself from falling. And that's what we see when we throw our arms out to the side or when we make some kind of abrupt adjustments. So this is the side-to-side movement, and this is up and down movement. Up and down movement is about 2 inches. The ideal is about 2 inches, 5 centimeters. And lateral translation is about 1 inch or a little bit less than 1 inch to the left and 1 inch to the right. Let's take a look how we walk. So please stand up. Stand up. Place your hand again somewhere on the belly, below the belly button. And try to feel this is where your center of mass is. Center of mass of your body in standing is somewhere there. Martial artists know it very well because they need to know to flip somebody. They need to put that place underneath the center of mass on another person in order to flip them. Now, walk a little bit. Walk in place first. Walk in place. Lift one foot, lift the other foot. Feel how you're moving that center of mass. Try to imagine somewhere deep in your sacrum, in front of your sacrum, how that point moves a little bit right and left. Maybe it moves a little front to back, depending on whether you shift your weight onto the front, onto the ball of the foot, or whether you go on the heel. Can you sense a difference between one side and the other side? Maybe you fold, you bring that center of mass in the abrupt way onto one foot and then climb up on the other. Just check it. Don't correct anything. Bring your awareness to maybe a new thing for you. Center of mass. Good. Then walk a little bit. Actually, not in place, but if you can, walk in your room, back and forth a few steps, and feel how that center of mass is traveling. You remember that red line, right to left, about inch, a little bit less than an inch to the right, a little bit less than an inch to the left. See if the movement is proportional. Some of us will find, whoa, to one side, I go a lot. Maybe you feel you sashaying, that the pelvis shifts quite a bit to one side and not so much on the other. Again, don't correct. Learn to feel, to sense, to experience that. And then shift your attention to the top of your head and feel what's your height. What happens not side to side, but actually getting taller, getting shorter, getting taller, getting shorter. As you walk and feel, you get tallest in mid stance, right? That's where our potential energy is the highest. Potential energy, you can think of pyramid. Pyramid has a very low potential energy, and therefore it cannot move. The center of mass is low. But if you reverse the pyramid, if you put it on its tip, the potential energy is the highest possible. And therefore it will be so wobbly, so in a way imbalanced or ready to move. So feel, as you're walking, you go on top of the leg and you come off of the leg, you get a little shorter in the double stance. You get taller again on the other leg, you get shorter. You get taller, you get shorter. Can you feel that your speed actually changes, the velocity changes, it's not still? Can you think of it like you falling down? When the leg is going forward, you're going downhill like the bicycle from Dr. Newman's book. And then you're climbing on top of the leg, your speed reduces a little bit. It's the slowest when you on top of the leg, and again reverses to the other side. Now, in the room, it may be challenging because you make 2-3 steps and you have to change again. I encourage you, and we'll have these daily exercises. So I'll release every day a new video for you, and we'll be actually doing it together. I'll be doing it together with you. So during those practices, you can go outside for a walk and spend 5 minutes observing each step going up and down or vertical or side to side, and everything else that we'll be learning, you will have a chance to practice more. Great. Come back to the screen. Let's go back. We have a couple more minutes with this theory. I know some of you love theory, and some of you, back to school, I'm not into it. Don't worry, we won't spend too long time. So back to what we just did. Vertical displacement, you're getting tallest mid stance. you're going shortest in the double stance and somewhere in between. Then the optimization of up and down movement, the vertical movement, is what conserves energy. You don't want too much of a bouncy gait. You see sometimes people on the street, a lot of up and down, up and down, up and down. And you also, and this is a difference with Saunders, because Saunders, that guy that from 1953, his idea was to flatten as close to possible. And actually, we find out that too flat is consuming more energy. So you want just the right amount of up and down movement of the center of mass. For most of us, the problem is not flatlining. The problem is that the movement is a little too high. So imagine your legs like pencils here, like the diagram here. You can see in the double stance, this is really long stride, long step. The center of mass is low, right? Because the triangle is down. Now, as you climb forward, you get tallest in the mid stance. The center of mass would go up. And then it will drop down again when you finish with this, when you fall forward. We call it a reversed pendulum, right? Because you can think of the pendulum, typical pendulum, you hang it at the ceiling and you put the bob down and you swing it, it swings right and left. Here, when walking, you can think of this as a reversed pendulum. The point is here when the tip of the pencil is, and the hip, your hip joint, moves up to the maximum position of the pendulum, and then it starts to fall forward as you propelling yourself forward. So without reduction, without the strategies that we utilize, that we humans utilize for walking, it will be quite a lot of movement up and down. With the techniques, with the strategies that we'll employ, we'll find out that the displacement is much smaller. How do we do it? So there are 4 strategies. Today, we will talk about the first 2. So without strategies, you have about 92 degrees of angle from the big stride one to the other. Then the first strategy is turning of the pelvis, allowing the pelvis to turn. Can you imagine how by bringing, this is the bird's eye view, right, of the person. We see the head, we see their shoulder, and the blue point is the hip joint. Can you see how without turning the pelvis, all the swinging forward would happen only in the hip joint? But if you add rotation of the pelvis from left buttock being behind to left buttock coming forward, you effectively elongate your step length, your stride or step length, actually step length. Step length is just one leg stepping forward. Stride is the full cycle, right heel, right heel. So step length increases because of ability to move the pelvis, to rotate the pelvis. So even that, if you just add pelvic rotation alone, you already reduce amount of hip movement that's necessary for walking, and you reduce this up and down movement. Second part that we'll study today is our ankle. Ability to flex ankle and point the ankle. This also functionally elongates your leg. When you strike the floor with the heel, by pushing the heel away from you, by flexing, you're technically elongating the leg. The same thing when you do push-off. When you do the heel lift and then push-off, the ankle bends in the opposite direction to plantar flexion, making the leg longer. So you don't have to rely on that reverse pendulum only. All right. So I think that's enough for today in terms of theory. Let's go and do some work. Come to standing, please.